All right. Big day today, rock stars. Big day today. Today we're going to talk about order of operations, or GEMDAs. You may have heard of PEMDAs. Well, we're going with GEMDAs. Get ready to rock and roll. Hey, do you guys know, like, when an alligator works out, what he or she drinks after the workout? Gatorade. It's an alligator. All right, so what you're going to be able to do today is use the order of operations and apply these properties of real numbers to simplify numerical expressions. So basically, you're going to have expressions, and you're going to be able to simplify them down to simplest terms using this method called order of operations. All right, so little vocab time. An expression, I've used that already. I've used that word already. An expression, okay, an expression is a one or a group of terms and may include variables, constants, operators, and grouping symbols. You may be like, I don't know what any of those mean. Well, let's take a look. So an expression, one thing that you'll notice about an expression, if you look at the example down here, is that it does not contain a equal sign. Okay, so an expression is a collection of one or more terms. Okay, so terms, look what this purple is pointing to. The terms are, it's working on this 2y is a term, this -8 is a term, this thing in here is a term. Like, all these are terms, all right? And it includes variables. Well, we know variables are letters that represent, they're unknown. So those represent our unknown. So look where the orange is pointing at all those letters. It can represent constants, okay, constants. It can represent operators. And when we say operators, we just say, think about operations. We're talking about addition and subtraction and addition and multiplication and division, okay? And the expression is literally all of those things, okay? This whole thing is an expression, okay? So this is what we're trying to accomplish. That's what an expression is. There's no equal sign. All right, next up, order of operations, which we've said. This is just the order, like sequence. I'm going to get out of bed. I'm going to go brush my teeth. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to get dressed. I'm going to drive to school. That's the order of my morning. The order of operations is simply telling us which operations are we going to do in what order. And we use GEMDAs as a guide, which we'll go into in detail in this video. But GEMDA stands for groupings, exponents, multiply and divide, add and subtract. Those letters. That's what GEMDAs is. G is for groupings, E is for exponents, M is for multiply, D is for divide, A is for add, and S is for subtract. Okay, radical expressions, okay? You're going to need to know this just because when we talk about exponents, we're also talking about radical expressions, which are using the square root symbol, okay? And when we use exponents, that's when we say something like 3 to the second. The exponent is the 2. So radicals and exponents follow the same order of operations. So what is this order of operations we speak of? Well, in simplest terms, there may be, when we're simplifying expressions, there may be multiple operations, meaning like that picture we showed you back on the order of operations slide, or the expression slide. You may have addition, subtraction, you may have multiplication, you may have exponents, you may have parentheses, you may have absolute value, all these things. And when we read a book, we simply just go from left to right and read. In math, there's an order of operations. It's the order in which we attack the problem. And so when we say order, we're saying, which part do I do first? Which part do I second? And when we say operation, we're talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, division, exponents, parentheses, all those things. That's what this is all about, okay? And so when I say GEMDAs, GEMDAs gives us our rules, all right? So that we know what order, what are we gonna do first, of operations, of all those little examples right there, okay? So first thing we do is the G, okay? The G stands for groupings, okay? This means anywhere we see numbers or operations that are grouped. And that can be in a lot of different forms. That can be in parentheses. If you look down at the bottom, we got 4 plus 2. We have the absolute value of -3 times 2 because these absolute value signs are grouping our answer. So that's a grouping. And we have brackets down here, which you won't use that much early on, but you'll get to them. Brackets, that's grouping an expression inside. So we do, wherever we see groupings where there is work to be done inside, we do that grouping first. Now remember, the side note of that is, if you see a parenthesis, so if we have 2 times a parenthesis like that, That's not a grouping. There's just only one. There's just a number inside of it. That's simply just telling us to multiply. A grouping has to have things to be done inside of it. Okay. So that we find a problem and we see where the groupings are and we do what's inside of the groupings first. All right. So then what is the E all about? Well, once we've done the grouping, the next thing we do is after we've solved the grouping, so we've gotten rid of our grouping brackets or parentheses or absolute value, then we look for exponents or radical expressions. We find anywhere in the problem where we see an exponent, like this example, 3 to the 4th, or a radical expression, the square root of 81, and we do those next. So we do groupings, and then we do exponents. Okay? Well, what happens after that? Wow, look, it's just like, looks like this GIMDAS thing is really doing a map for us. So we do multiplication and division. Now notice that I highlighted them both at the same time because we are going to do multiplication and division next. And when we do, we look for whatever is left in the problem. We look for anywhere where there's multiplication and division. And then which one do we do first between multiply and divide? That's when we go to the left and right rule. Okay, left to right rule. We go back to like we're reading a book. As I'm reading that expression from left to right, multiplication, I do that first. Or if I'm doing it, oh, there's a division, I do that first. So once we've got rid of all groupings and we've gotten rid of all exponents, then we look for any multiplication or division to do. Okay, so here's an example. 4 divided by 2 times 9. What do we see first? We see 4 divided by 2. Okay, and so that means we do that first. All right, so we do 4 divided by 2, and that gives us 8. And then we bring down what we haven't solved yet. So then times 9 comes down after you solve the division. And then you simply solve that. What's 8 times 9? It's 72. Look at that. You just did some order of operations. All right. So then what happens? We do our groupings. We do our exponents. We get rid of all multiplication and division. What's next? Well, then it's time for addition and subtraction. The last two. They follow the same rules as multiplication and division. Which one do I see first from left to right? So for example, I have 4 minus 2 plus 9. Well, the only thing that's left is addition and subtraction. So which one do you see first? Well, you see 4 minus 2. 4 minus 2 equals 2. Then I bring down the rest of the problem, which was the plus 9. And then I solve that next, and I get 11. Order of operations. All right? GIMDAS gives us our rules for the order of operations. So the first thing we do is groupings. Then we do exponents. Then we do multiplication and division following the left to right rule. And then we do addition and subtraction following the left to right rule. And I bet you're saying, I want to fill in the blank of my notes. Well, here you go. So order of operations is a set of rules called GIMDAS that tell us what order we do each part of the expression. So what do I do first? And when I'm done with that, what do I do next? And what do I, just help me out. Help me out with the order of operations. The second thing is what do the GIMDAS stand for? Well, the G stands for groupings. Write that down. The E stands for exponents. Write that down, which is also radical expressions, right? The M stands for multiply, and the D stands for divide, and the A stands for add, and the S stands for subtract. GIMDAS. Make sure you write those down. Next up, for multiplication and division, we do them at the same time, right? So the reason I say that is because they are, when you write GIMDAS, remember when I put the M and the D together? But we do whichever one we see from left to right. So we look for multiplication and division at the same time, and whichever one we see first, like we're reading a book, that's what we do. And guess what? The addition and subtraction rules are the same thing. We look for addition and subtraction at the same time, but we do whichever one we see first from left to right. Very good. Well, let's do some practice. All right, so I put GIMDAS over to the side there for you. And then what you simply do is you look at it and you say, do I see any groupings? And the answer to that question is yes. So we do groupings. And I want you to think about, when we're doing these type of problems, I want you to think about a piece of pizza. Okay? I want you to think about a piece of pizza. Like, we're going to solve this and try to make it get smaller and smaller. Okay? So the first thing we do is groupings, and we see them. So what you do on your paper is you draw these two little lines to kind of tell yourself that this is what I'm doing first. Okay? I am doing 8 minus 3 first. And what is 8 minus 3? Well, it's 5. So you do one step at a time, you write it down, and then you bring everything else down that you did not do. Okay, so the only thing I have left is 2 times 5. Do I have any exponents? No. Is multiply and divide next? Yes. What is 2 times 5? You draw your two lines and you solve. And the answer to this question is 10. We did groupings first, And then we worked our way down the list. Let's do another one. Okay, just get a little bit harder each time. So now we got groupings. Yes, I see parentheses, but there's multiple things to do inside the parentheses. Well, we use the order of operations once we get inside the parentheses as well. So we have 9 minus 2 times 2. Well, do we do addition? Or I'm sorry, do we do subtraction or multiplication first? It looks like multiplication is done first over here. So we draw our two little lines and we say, what is 2 times 2? It is 4. And guess what, guys? We have to write everything else back down, okay? So we still have 9 minus 4. We have not gotten rid of the parentheses yet because we have not finished it. And then we write down everything else, okay? Now, what's next? We still got parentheses. We still got groupings. Let's do that. What's 9 minus 4? It's 5, okay? And then we bring bring everything else back. Oops, sorry. Then we bring everything else back. So so we have 2 to the third. Whoops. Minus 5 plus 8. Okay? Now, there's no more groupings left, but I do see an exponent. 2 to the third does not mean 2 times 3, everybody. It means you take the 2, that's our base, and you write it down the amount of times the exponent says, and then you multiply them together. What is 2 times 2 times 2? Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times another 2 is 8. So this is 8. And what am I going to do? I'm going to write everything else back down, okay? Now, do I see any more exponents? No. Do I see any multiplication and division? No. Do I see an addition and subtraction? Yes. And what rule do we follow? We read it from left to right. What's 8 minus 5? It is 3. Okay, bring everything else back down. And we only have one step left, so what is 3 plus 8? It is 11. Okay, and there is our fun piece of pizza. Okay, so our answer is 11 to that one. Let's try one more. Okay. Now this one's a little tricky because we have an expression that has a division symbol in it. So when you see these, treat them like two different problems. Do the top and do the bottom, and then you're going to divide at the very end when you get everything kind of solved. Okay? So you have to solve this top expression first. Do we see any groupings? Yes. These are a little bit harder to write down, but you just go ahead and say, I'm going to do 4 plus 8 because it's inside the groupings. And I'm going to write it down. And then I'm going to put times 2 because we haven't done that yet. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to put 2 to the third. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do what 2 to the third is. What's 2 to the third? We just did that on the last problem. That equals 8, right? Because that's exponents next. And then 12 times 2 on the top is what? Well, I'm sorry. We got to put 12 times 2. Because we just do one step at a time, right? So we did 12 times 2. We did 2 to the third. So now what's left? We got multiplication division. Which one do we do first? We do the top. 12 times 2 is equal to 24. Okay, and we have it over 8. And there's only one thing left. When we have a fraction, it also means divide. What's 24 divided by 8? That would be equal to 3. And now you've used order of operations to simplify that bad boy. Good work, boys and girls. I am so proud of you. All right, I think we're ready to rock and roll. So you're going to have a lot of practice with this. You're going to see a ton of order of operations in your math career. What do a mouse and a wheel have in common? They both squeak. Oh. Yeah, that one was a little lame.